Plus, two are. I said, that'll be deep. Well, I need to sound the change. Yes, sir. Eventually see. All right, attention everyone. Air horn. Or a bosun with a club. Take it away, man.
We're ready?
Yep, ready.
Okay, so this is the Osbjerg ship as shown.
I'm sorry. I need to introduce you, or you can introduce yourself.
Oh.
Loud, please. Yes, loud, yes.
All right, Hank Ghittino, been a member here for a while, making a presentation today on the Viking ship Osbjerg and the model that was based on. What?
Can you see if I cut the lights off?
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I can see.
Good.
Yeah.
Much better.
Ready? Okay, so this is the Osbjerg ship in the Viking Museum in Oslo, Norway. As it was present at that time. The museum's been closed for a couple of years for renovation, so there's no telling how they're gonna bring it back now.
Did you actually go there?
Did I go there? No.
I've been. Cool. Awesome.
Okay. So here we go, introduction. So the story of the Osbjerg and the model. And I didn't know much about this model and about the ship until the kit came up at one of our auctions. And I've been thinking that I'd like to have a Viking ship in my collection. But most of them are kind of small and representative models. But this is actually based on a real ship that was found in a burial ground. So part of the fun, I've said before, of building models is learning more about the area that the ship came from and the people and the history and all that stuff there. I didn't know a lot about this part of the world, but I found this book here, History of the Vikings and the Norse Culture by Kane. And it was really good. If you just want to read one book and get a good basics of the Norse and the Vikings and their relationship and their history, I recommend this one. So a few things that I got out of this book: that all Vikings are Norse, but not all Norse are Vikings. The Norse culture started up around in the Bronze Age, about 2500 BC. The first Viking raid was like 797 AD, and the Viking Age went on to about 1050. So this takes place where the ship is right at the very beginning of the Viking Age. So it could be a Norse ship or a Viking ship. But there's a couple of neat things that I found. There's several terms that came out of the Norse that are in the English language now. And one of them that came out was honeymoon. And so most Norse weddings would take place in the fall after the summer crops and fall harvest, which had pretty hard winters. And so the weddings would take place in the fall. And it's one of the gifts the couple was given was enough honey mead that was made from crops that year, enough to last them for a month, which is one moon. So that's the term, honeymoon. I thought that was pretty old. Okay. And no, Vikings did not have horns on the helmets. That came out of Hollywood. But some of the things that the Norse did in the weapons section, they developed several forms of martial arts, and two of which are still being practiced today. So that's pretty interesting. So I was going to go deeper into this about history and culture, but just the presentation is kind of long as it is, so it would just take up too much time. But if you're interested, check out the book. Okay, so here we are with the ship. Okay, so Osbjerg is a typical Viking ship. There's the size there. It was built in the western part and then buried 14 years later on the eastern part. They're thinking that the ship was built strictly for burial purposes. And some of the evidence that they show is that the ornate carvings on this ship isn't typical of a Viking ship. And the oars had very little wear on them. But if it was built at age 20, buried 14 years later, what were they doing with it for 14 years. But it should take longer than 820 to actually build it. Okay, so it was discovered by Oscar Rom, and he purchased this farm from relatives, and he found a piece of ornately carved wood fragments, and he took it to an archaeologist at the University of Oslo. And he came out and checked it out. He found a few more pieces, and the university actually wound up buying that piece of the farm in order to do the excavation. So it took only 3 months to dig it out, which kind of surprising. But then 20 years to put it back together. And it's about 95% of the original material is in that picture that you saw. But the site had also been robbed at some point in the 9th century, and the skeletons of the bodies have been just tossed aside while they were rummaging around. Anything precious they probably took out of there, gems or metals or anything, but everything that was left that was found is of such historic value that don't need all that other stuff. Okay, so this is where it's located, right down in here. It's off of fjord or something. But it's interesting that right now the site is like 4 kilometers inland because sea level was so much higher back in that time. So climate change keeps going on. Sea level may get back up there. This is the restored burial mound, and they took the remains and reinterred the remains from the burial ship back into this ground here.
Can we interrupt for a moment?
Sure.
It's not, it's showing up on our screen, but not online. So I'm going to see if there's anything I can do about that. Sorry for the interruption. Are we still on?
Yes.
Oh, that's
There are, let's see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just before. You guys being said to the guys.
I'll take it down to where I
still on?
was.
Still on.
Okay.
Email me. Sorry, they did.
No, so I don't have a I can't pick which slide number I'm at. Have you?
I spoke
Oh,
about the
yeah,
Liburnian
just keep
today.
going.
That is almost exactly the same look as the Liburnian from 600 BC.
Okay, ready to continue?
Yes.
All right, so here we are. This is the excavation of the ship. And that's how they found it. A couple of things to note here. If you look at these fences around here, there's so many people that wanted to come out and watch what they were doing. They had to put up some fences to keep them falling in the hole. I was looking too, as far as the depth here. You look at these guys here, let's just say they're 6 foot for easy measurement. So this looks to be about a 30-foot excavation. The other thing of interest is you can see how vertical the excavation is. And that's because this is a clay soil. It's very dense. So it won't slide in, it won't cave in like a sand would.
When did they do that?
Excuse me?
When did they do that?
1903. I was wondering how they dug this thing out too with some kind of implements here, might be drags or something. I didn't really look a whole lot to see how they did it, just that it was done. But here's some more pictures. Here's our digging crew here. Everybody dressed up. So did they really do this thing all with manual labor and shovels? Here's another picture of people hanging over the side, watching what they're doing. And this is where they're towing it out towards the fjord to bring it over to Oslo, where they were going to restore it. Okay, the women of Osbjerg. So there were 2 women that were buried in this ship. And they were laid out on a bed, highly decorated, and they were generally, this wasn't a type of burial performed for women, so they had to be somewhat important members of society. One was turned to be 70 to 80 and the other about 50. And the older woman showed that she had some diseases and died from cancer. And the younger woman, they don't know what she had died from, but she had been injured at some point. So who were they? The relationship isn't known, and it's not clear which one was the important one. One could have been a servant to the other and sacrificed to comfort her. I don't really see that because the Vikings didn't really have ritual killings to go with burying people. But the older woman could have been the Queen Asia, the grandmother of one of their kings. And it's not clear how they were related. But what they do know is that with everything, the objects they were buried with, they had to have a high value within that Viking society. Okay, so the grave goods, let's see what was buried with them. So they're accompanied by a lot of stuff, personal items, of course, kitchen tools, carts and sleighs, animal heads, and 15 horses, 6 dogs, and 2 cows. My girlfriend asked me when I reviewed it, why'd they have to kill 15 horses?
Yeah.
I don't know. I only had 2. I only had one cart there. Horse meat. Okay, so this is the burial chamber here, and it's a replica, I believe. It doesn't look like scale-wise. If these stanchions are maybe 3 feet, that's maybe a 6-footer, and you'll see some of the stuff, the bed that was supposed to be in here and everything is kind of large, though. I think that's just a representative burial tent that was built behind the mast. So here's the cart that was in there, and it's similar to a lot of other carts, and they're almost without exception are found in wealthy women's graves. You can see that there's highly decorated. There's cat carvings on the back, which supposedly has something to do with fertility. And this could have been a scene from an old saga or legend. And nobody really knows what they were used for, but one of the things I saw was they would put a horse on either side and they could ride it out into the water. So whoever was the occupant in the cart didn't get wet going through the shallow water to get onto the ship. That's guess that I can 4-wheel drive. Yeah, 2 horsepower. All right, so here's one of the sleighs that was in the ship. This is the bed that they were found on. There's a number of Buddhas were found throughout the ship, and I don't know what how they connected with Buddha. There was a number of Buddhas there, and there's several carved animal heads, and there's a very ornate bucket that was found with them. So the serpent, the stems are both don't have a dragon's head; they've got a serpent head on. And so snakes were part of the lives and part of the magic and mythology and ritual stuff. And they have been found in funereal contexts, but almost exclusively alongside women. So possibly another piece of evidence that the ship was built for women's burial purpose. Oh, this one got bumped. Okay, just some basics on Viking ship construction. So we're all probably familiar with blinker or left straight building. Does give a lot of strength and transmit the forces, hulls and oars. They're very simply built tools. A lot of this, I've seen some of these, they didn't use saws for cutting their planks. Everything was axes and wedges. And I saw a video about somebody doing a reproduction, how they worked on these things. It's pretty tedious work. But there was a stem smith, there was the master builder that based on the curvature and size of the stems and the number of planks would be how the ship would be designed. And so there was one guy that would figure all that out for whatever size ship they were going to build and lay it all out, and they would build it from there. And of course, there's no plans, and everything was handed down through the generations. This is how we do it. These are the tools that we use. But computer modeling has shown that gave us a better understanding about how sophisticated these shapes of the hulls could really be. They're shallow keeled, so they had a lot of leeway, and Yeah, they did find a relationship, mathematical relationship between the length of the keel, the size of the stem post, the number of planks, and the radius of curvature. All came together and figured out by the stems that's there. And actually, it takes thousands and thousands of hours, labor. Everybody gets to work on it, men and women. As I said, the planks aren't sawn, but cut along the grain. So the caulking was primarily wool, and then the entire ship was coated with pine tar to waterproof it. They had a very short lifespan, though, just a few decades at most, before needing to be replaced. A lot of effort to not get a whole lot of time. So the clankers that hold the side planks together. Copy these, clip these off of videos. So I've got parts of it there. So you put in, these nails will go through with a wooden washer on either side, join the planks together. And then it'd be snipped off. And this guy is using bolt cutters. I don't know what the Vikings use. But then when you finish it off, to flatten it down and bend it over, it takes about 100 whacks with a hammer to get this done. So when you consider that, and you consider all of these clankers, 100 whacks each, that'll take some time and some forearm. Okay, so now we'll get down to the model build already. And it's kind of shrunk off too. So this is my model. I meant to bring it today. I had every intention to do, but my truck broke and I had no way of getting it here. So, but I've got some pictures. So this is the model, how it came out, final, and this is how I make the presentation. I got this idea from Gene Berger. The most interesting, most attractive part of this model is the hull, the shape, the size of it. And when you saw it in this slide here, you can't see much of the hull just sitting on the cradle that comes with it. So I wanted to show the bottom, and he had used a piece of acrylic mirror. So I went, and after I made my base, I took it into, had a piece of acrylic mirror cut for it, and they drilled the holes where I need the holes. And I put that on top of some pine 1-bys that I joined, and that reflected the base really good. So what you can see in the second photo here is, this is the beam I made here, and this is the reflective part here. We can really see the hull pretty good reflected in the mirror.
How long is the?
35 inches. And when I started making this, I was thinking 35 inches. Let's make models that were 34 or 35 inches, but that's from tip of the jib boom to the tip of the main boom. This is 35 inches just from stem to stem, so it's all hull in here. I also wanted the display to be partially, wanted the model to look like it was floating some, like what you saw in the museum sitting there. And I thought that I might need side stanchions for stabilization, but it turned out I didn't. I took an 1/8-inch brass rod and drilled up into the frames. And so they're at least about 2 inches up into the model. And then the beam is a little over 3/4, and then there's 3/4 plus maybe 1/4. And so it's almost close to 2 inches below too. So it's really solid. I mean, it'll wobble a little bit if you move it, but it's not going anywhere. It's really tight.
The beam made of?
Basswood, different sizes of basswood, 1 3/4 piece of basswood, and then I cut some pieces for basswood for the top and the bottom.
That stain on it?
Yeah, stain the same, use the same stain. And if you look at, well, I'll get to that later. I use the same stain for the beam and the hull and the molding around the display base. Okay, so this is what I use as resources on this thing. This is a Billings boat kit, and it comes with one double-sided plan sheet. It's not to scale, but once you start laying out pieces like the whole pieces, it is to scale. It's got a picture book. I mean, a picture book. There's no text in there at all, any kind of language. And it's got pictures about how things are supposed to fit together. No text. But some of we were talking about build logs earlier, and I found some build logs both on Model Ship World and others. And I've noticed with people that start build logs that some people stick with it and build all the way through, and others will take their ways and then stop. And so at this point in time, 2014 through 2017, there were like 4 or 5 people that were building this model on Model Ship World. But best source was this guy, Jack P. His build log, I think he was in Sweden. His build log not only has what he's doing and what he's modified, bashing on this kid, but also showed pictures of the parts that he used in the package, if he got something else from and where he got it from, and as a good start for things. So a lot of extra information as well as detailed record of his build right from the start all the way through to the end there. So yeah, that was real helpful. And another thing that was really helpful, you noticed on Model Expo, they have a lot of thumbnails of the model in different stages of building or built up different views after it's been built. We must have had 20, 25 thumbnails of Osbjerg from different angles, but that was really helpful, especially on some of the things. So, all right, so the hull, I didn't get a picture of the hull laid out because I wasn't planning on doing a presentation until I got a little further into it. So anyway, this is the hull. It comes with the build ends there, the holders in the center of plywood. You get the base yourself and put this together and build it upside down and putting on all your planks here, one after the other. This is the way the planks come. This is a laser cut kit. So you cut off all of these planks where they're supposed to go, put them on here, and then they join with a scarf joint in the middle of the 2 pieces. And the toughest part was getting them to meet up at where they were supposed to, because they're notched, kind of a rabbit in here, and they're notched. So these clamps, if you remember, Tony showed us how to make these one time, and they're the best planking clamps I've ever come across. I've just been finishing up using them on Caroline too. All right, so installing the clinkers. This was an idea that Jack P came up with. 1,394 nails later.
Yeah.
So I made this jig that was out of 2 pieces of planking that would slide along on these flat straps here. And I could mark where I wanted the hole, and they would all be in the same depth into the plank, mark where I wanted them to, and then use a probe to put in a indentation that the drill would walk around, kind of like just pilot push. And then when I was figuring this out, I knew I wasn't going to drill all these holes with pin vise, and I had a rechargeable Dremel, still a little awkward to use, but I have an older model variable speed Dremel, and I found this power board that would actually work with it. And so I used that as my drill and drill all the holes and move down and drill some more and offset after all the holes are drilled, I put the stain on, and I did the holes first because once the stain is on, it'd be harder to see where I want it to go. Anyway, here's them partially put on. So putting the nails in with taking a hemostat, stick it in there, tap, tap, tap. And if I needed to clean out a hole of any stain, then I had a pin vise pushing through that. Stain on this, I used that, I had switched some time back to using gel stains because they're supposed to go on flatter and they don't penetrate as much and doesn't come out as blotchy. But I even got a fresh can, this is which pine that I've used before. I even got a fresh can of this gel stain, and it still came out really blotchy. But on this particular model, I think it looks good on it. Give it some weathering agent kind of thing. But I was wondering why it was coming out so shiny. I hadn't even put a top coat right there. And I started reading the can. It's got polyurethane in it. I didn't know that stuff. Didn't need a top coat. All right, so this is the framing here. So I don't know why the kid didn't do this, but they didn't have the equally spaced frames. They left some out, and everybody that had a ship build that has built this model added some frames to it. So I went ahead and added 5 more frames that they would all be equidistant. And along with adding the frames, there's these deck supports, because the deck actually fits in between the frames. There's a deck support along the sides. Yeah, we put those in. And these are the two midship stringers, which I'll be coming back to, and that just shows you where they are. Okay, so here's a problem. And I didn't see anybody on the build logs that ran into this problem. Frames are in here. The frames are notched for the stringers, and the notches have the stringers come up flush with the top of the frame. And then there's a small piece that fits on top of the frame. The frames are exposed. And thing is, though, once you start putting the decking on top of the stringers here, this is 0.7. Decking is 1.5 millimeters, so they stick out above it. And the frame's not supposed to be exposed. So what to do about that? So I thought to put an additional strip on the top of the frames, but then the deck planks that weren't on the strings would be below the frame tops. That would, I could just cut these things out of here, because now that the deck framing planking is all done, it's strong enough, it's not going. Or I could shave the strings down to accept the thickness of the deck planks. And that's what I wound up doing, because that would take more effort. Took just a piece of planking to use this as a thickness gauge, and number 2 X-Acto, and shaved them all down. Back to what I was doing for planking. So the deck planking. I took the long planks and I stained them first. I figured I'll just stain these, cut them, and then it'll all fit fine. The individual plank took the stain really well, very uniform. And now it's going for a light and dark with this. I'll use two different stains, one for the deck, one for the other things, for the hull and the other stuff. So, but I started noticing as I put them in, I had some planks that were sticking up a little higher, some that were a little lower, and I had these peaks sticking up here. What am I gonna do with these? So I wound up, well, I could take a hand chisel and just kind of shave them off a little bit or sand them off, and did that. But then when I started stain back on, I was down to a different part of the grain. The stain was taken, that grain was taking the stain differently than was on top. So I wound up these 4 middle sections, I just tore them out completely and just redid it with fresh planking, unstained, and I came back and stained. This isn't the final. But with the and it's kind of like cutting a piece for a jigsaw puzzle, trying to each piece get them squared up into these things. But on the final decking here, the stain is kind of irregular. But some people have looked at it and say, oh, it looks good because it looks like it's weathered, been used somewhere. So that's what I'm going with. It's a weathered deck. That is why the stain isn't uniform throughout. All right, so there's some parts in this kit that are really a piece of crappy plywood that they were going to be painted, it would be fine, but staining just wouldn't work. So everybody that had a build log have replaced a lot of these parts, and so I figured, well, I'll replace them too. This is the mast fish. The photo's just been bunched up together. This is what came in the kit. I didn't even bother trying to put it all together. It's the one I'm going to use. So I carved this out of a piece of basswood. These were the oar racks. What they look like. I made my own out of basswood. You'll notice as we go through, I got a lot of scroll saw experience working with this thing here, replacing all these parts. The cleats, made all new cleats. I figured by the time I clean the laser scar off of these things here, there's not going to be anything left to them. And I still got this crappy plywood. Went ahead and made my own there. Okay, so I don't know what these things are called. Breeding cleats. Lead call it said they might be dead-eye precursors. And what they do is they put tension and an adjustment on the standing rigging for the mast. These pieces are not in the kit. They're not in the picture book. The only place that they show up is on the drawing, one-sided drawing of the drawing, but they're from side view. So all you can get is, you know how long they are, but you have no idea what they look like. So going back into the model bills and particularly the Model Expo thumbnails there, I was able to get what they look like. I knew how long they were, so I made these up too, and that's what they look like on the model.
How long are they?
Maybe an inch or so, not very much. All right, so shields. These are plastic shields that come in the kit, and we're going to use those. And these are the ones that I made. How I made them. So I had this piece of teak in my shop, and my wife had brought this home from her dad's workshop a lot of years ago and wanted me to use it in projects. Well, there wasn't enough of it to build anything with. So just sat in my shop until something came on, and what I had to build these shields.
If you have to register, please join us now in the Explorer Theater for a lecture by John Corson.
So anyway, for this to be an opportunity to use a piece of this, so there's some sentimental value here. Some I have to use this piece of teak framework to use something in one of the models. So Jimmy was going to slice it down for me on his bandsaw, and what I did a test piece with someplace to see how close I could get it on my table. So I needed 2 millimeters. I could actually get less than 2 millimeters with my table saw. So I whacked off a 3-inch piece and sliced it down to 2 millimeter slices, and that's what I had to work. So then I was micro mark saw, and Jimmy showed me how to build a slide table so that you put something on it and make repetitive cuts, slice, move it over, slice, move it over. Then I got a micro mark catalog, and they had this one in there for $39. I said, well, save me the effort of figuring it out and getting materials out of my shop and whatever. So I went ahead and bought it, but then I had to modify it anyway because the rails that run in the slots on the saw were narrower. So it was a little sloppy side to side. The precision that I wanted with having to cut all these grooves, I wanted to be more solid. So I took those off and put some wider ones on and got a good solid fit there. And then I noticed too, once you do your initial cut, they make the face out of masonite. Once you do the initial cut on this, the masonite starts getting springy. So when I was doing my cuts, I had a scrap piece of 2x2 that I put on top of the board, put some downward pressure on it, and then slide it back and forth. That worked out perfect. The process was take a piece here, about 3 inches worth, grooves every 4 millimeters, and then use the plastic shield as a template, cut 4 of these out, and then rough cut them on a scroll saw, do a rough finish on the bench sander, and then a final shaping with sanding sticks, and then 2 coats of teak oil, and that kind of finished up the shields. So now the centers. So Jack found hobnails made good centers. Didn't consider anything about hobnails. You know, there's a lot of stuff that he did on his build that I would never have thought of myself, but I was able to do what he did, at least incorporate what he did. I guess you can still get hobnails, and they're still used in some places to get through a muck and mire and ice. And then I found some 4 millimeter washers that made good for the backing. Then it's just a question of cut, grind, paint to finish, and assemble the shields. So the oars, I used the parts in the kit to put the oars together, but I wanted to show my mini blade. Back during COVID, when we could only meet virtually, Ron did a show and tell on this lathe that he got for like $40. And I was looking at that and I said, I got to get me one of those for, you know, shaping masts and yards and spars and all that stuff. But at the same time that I was looking for the for that lathe there, I came across this YouTube video about how to take it and make it longer, because initially this motor sits on top of this aluminum piece here. And this like that, so you only get this little bit to work with here. But using it this way, putting this extension on, I have a full 10 inches now. And It also has and extends the tool rest here, which is really helpful. Don't have to move this around as much. And for this application here, it wasn't all that much because I just had to cut out this groove here. But when you got to do 30, it's a whole lot easier than stand there with piece of sandpaper and running your fingers back. Did that. And I wasn't sure. I thought that it might move around some with vibration or something. So I put a non-skid base on. So I've probably got maybe 60 bucks in this. And I've used it on a couple models already and it works really well. Proxima, which would be probably premier, top of the line one, exactly the same. Nothing different, variable speed motor. It doesn't have the extended tool rest. It just has this size tool rest on it too. 350 bucks. So I like my tool. Okay, and then that's all, folks. After I have one more slide after questions, but are there any questions that we didn't ask? Yes.
What's your overall assessment?
Not there yet.
Well, what's your overall assessment of this buildings? The pluses and minuses.
Overall, it's good. You know, you can figure stuff out, but you gotta have other sources to go with it. But some of these things like the rigging cleats there or something, wouldn't be in it, you wouldn't have anything in there that you can use. Other things like that. So you need other sources, but yeah, it worked out okay. Anybody else? Nobody else?
Yes.
Okay, now you can applaud.
Just a quick comment. This is Kevin.
Recent reading is that the Museum, Oslo Museum will open in 2025, been closed since 21, and it is a complete do-over of the museum. They'll have the three, the Gothenstadt, the Osbjerg, and the tone ships will be there and more accessible, I think, is what they're talking about.
Is that, I wonder if that's close to the museum for the Vasa.
The Vasa?
Yes.
It's a different.
This is in Oslo, Norway. The Vasa.
Swedish and the other.
Oh, okay, thank you.
The Vasa is also being.
Thanks, Hank. Nice. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for showing up. We'll see y'all next month. I just want to tell you how much I learned.
See you all. Thanks.
Yeah.